You're watching Worldview Tube, a Brannon House television network.
The Tamara Scott Show. Tamara has served as the state director for one of America's largest pro-life, pro-family public policy organizations. In 2007, Tamara was named one of America's top 10 most influential kingmakers by the Religion News Association. Tamara has spent years proclaiming and defending the values of a Christian worldview that is the foundation of our constitutional republic. And now, here is your host, Tamara Scott.
Hey everybody, welcome. I am Tamara Scott. This is the Tamara Scott Show. Thank you for joining us as we help bring you let me say that this has been such a funny day. As we bring you help when the headlines hit home, we bring you God's word in today's world when the headlines hit home. I'm laughing because poor Thomas is doing this remotely because of all the weather that we've had in Tennessee. As you know, we ended up doing an encore on Monday. I couldn't wait to get back and see all of you and talk to you after being at the RNCO week and having guest hosts. My thanks again to all those amazing guest hosts. But then we needed to do the encore. Then Tuesday, same thing, the weather, but also I was with Trump at the rally here in Des Moines, so we did the encore. So we were glad to be back in studio, but it was treacherous for the folks in Tennessee. There's just a lot. I see the videos online of phone poles down, electric lines down, and just everything they're dealing with. I just had a call with folks across the nation today, and no matter where they're at, there's just a lot of complications. I heard from friends today in West Virginia, and here's what they said. I want to see if I can say this properly. Let me see. They had they're checking on their elderly. It's the fourth day in a row. 55 county systems are closed. Been here very busy every day checking on our people. Every place is out of road salt. Subdivisions out of road salt. We can plow our street, but that's it. The same for our church parking lot, which her husband takes care of the church parking lot. This is from Melody, one of my friends in West Virginia, one of our viewers on the show. And so then our electric, internet, and cable came back yesterday, so they've been without that. Tried to wash clothes. The washer's now on the blink, having a repairman coming. The backyard looks like crystal trees, and she sent me a photo. It is beautiful, but I can't show it to you because we're doing this show today remotely the best we can. And I'm not even using my computer because I don't think mine's weather related. I think mine is just overfilled, and I've got data issues. So I'm working on that as well. But they said it's just gorgeous, but it's hazardous. Sometimes something looks good. It's not always good for us. Boy, there's a good lesson there, isn't there? There's a devotion right there, and Miss Melody will probably write one. So everybody stay safe out there. Stay safe and go when you need to go. But if you're supposed to shelter in place, listen to it. Right? Listen to it. So my guest today, I'm so thrilled. Bill Fetter is so good to join us whenever we ask if he possibly can. I could ask him about anything. I could pull a topic out of the sky, and he would not only be able to discuss it intelligently, but with credible information. And he probably could go back and have history that he just remembers, that he could talk and quote out of it as well. I don't care what we would be talking about. You hear his voice on AmericanMinute.com, on radio stations across the nation. We see him on other media outlets now asking just for his opinion and his counsel on so many issues, whether it's Islam in America. We continue to talk about that threat, and more states are now talking about legislation not to ban Sharia law. That's very wide sweeping, and that freaks people out because there are things like foot washing and dietary needs in there. But there's no reason that your governmental bodies, buildings, institutions, agencies, courts, parks need to recognize it. We have the God mentioned in our preamble. We have the Constitution, and anything that is not compatible with that deserves no recognition in a governmental body or building, in my opinion. And we're working on it, working on getting that language, and I see more and more talking about it. So without much more, let me welcome Bill Fetter. Thank you for being a friend of liberty and a friend to us here at the Tamara Scott Show.
Well, great to be with you, Tamara.
So you heard me I don't mean to be complaining, but there's just a lot going on. It's just a lot of complications to getting into today's show. So I'm glad you're here. Thank you very much and I have confidence. If I only ask one question, Bill, you could carry the rest of the show with everything you know. And like I said, we could talk about anything because I have no notes in front of me today. So here we go. So you want to hit the weather? I mean, you and I think, have same concerns. I have done shows. I haven't done a lot of shows on weather modification manipulation, but we have discussed geoengineering and those issues that are plaguing us. And whether this storm or not, I have no idea if it's God's hand or man's interference. I don't know. But do you want to comment on the weather? Or you want to move forward?
Yeah, well, I like we live in Florida, and Governor DeSantis actually signed a bill to limit the geoengineering. We still see planes flying, but at least he's recognizing it as a threat. Most people do a little research, and Bill Gates has been pretty open about wanting to lower the Earth's temperature, and by doing that, to put reflective particulates in the atmosphere, aluminum flecks that can reflect the sun and cool the Earth. The problem is the aluminum gets into the rain, falls to the ground, gets into the plants and the food, and causes infertility. Amongst other things. And so that's pretty much open. That's not even delving into the conspiracy theory.
Right.
That's just, matter of fact, there's some corporation that just is raising billions of dollars to do just that worldwide. Now, anybody that studies a little deep into the climate, there are cycles that are not related to man's activity that have to do with the sun and so forth. And there was, the little ice age back in the 800s to the, 1200s, and then the Earth got warmer. So it's already gone through cooling and warming cycles. So the problem is they need a crisis that they can have an excuse for the government to take more control over people's lives. They also don't like population. Still going back to the debunked model of the Earth's going to be overpopulated, the numbers are coming out now that we're not even at replacement. China had the one-child policy for the longest time, and now they're saying, forget all that. We're gonna not have enough workers to work in the factories. We need to start having kids. We're not even at replacement levels now. Ironically enough, when you look at different demographics, where Western world has bought into the climate change and limiting population, Islamists have not bought into that. And so you'll have the different Sharia complying immigrants. Sharia does say that a Muslim man can marry a girl as young as 9 years old, and that he can have 4 wives, plus as many women as his right hand possesses, as many as they would take in battle. They just did not have the status of a wife. They were less than that. They were concubine and slave wives and so forth. But at the very least, a Sharia following Muslim male can have 4 wives. When they come into Europe, they'll put them on welfare, set them up in their own apartments, maybe their own houses, and the women go down to the welfare office and say the husband's not around, and they get welfare. Could you imagine that? Immigrants abusing welfare programs. Anyway, they get welfare checks, and then the Muslim man will visit his wives, and the more children they have, the larger the welfare checks get. And he's living like a prince with his harem, and all the kids are his. And so the typical Muslim woman, it's a social stigma to have less than 5 kids. And so they're having lots and lots of children and getting lots of welfare checks. I remember watching years ago an interview in London with Joram Chudare, founder of Islam for UK. And the lady that interviewed him, put on the veil so that she could respect him. And she says, well, don't you feel bad that you're living off the English people while your stated goal is to get rid of man-made law and institute Sharia? His response was, Allah allows us to live off the infidel while we are subduing them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very, in a sense, parasitic that we can live off the host victim while the goal is to kill the host culture.
To subdue them. That's the key right there. So it's parasitic until it's predatory. Parasitic until it's predatory, and it will move to the second one. And as Annie Cyrus tells us, who survived Islam, she survived Iran, that everyone, whether they're moderate or peaceful Muslim, will become, she calls them inactivated, and says they will become activated at one point. They will either choose to lose their lives with the rest of us, or they will choose to take lives so they can sustain their own with the Islamic folks. So think about that. We've got to go to our first break. We'll be right back after these messages. Bill Fetter is my guest, AmericanMinute.com.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world, and it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
I need to tell you about our Bella Grace, astaxanthin and cat's claw. In 2022, got an award for helping with cognitive function, and in 2023 in the sports arena for active ingredients, nutrition, and format. But the best is what we hear from so many of you. You have noticed better joint health, improved mobility, less eye strain and fatigue, helping with computer vision syndrome, visual acuity, depth perception, alleviating dry eyes, but also helping with your immunity, your stress management, endurance, less fatigue overall, not just eye fatigue, muscle recovery, mental clarity, focus, and gut health. Then there's the fun list. The firmer, smoother skin texture, fewer fine lines and wrinkles, improved skin elasticity, decreased age spots, more even skin tone, improved skin hydration, reduced oxidative stress, healthier nails, less cellulite, hair health, better sleep. Who wouldn't want any of those? Call them beauty items if you wish, but who doesn't want to feel a little bit better or more confident when you're going to present in the public square, when you're going to speak at a city council? And who just doesn't want to feel a little healthier? Maybe they're just byproducts of being healthier. More information at tamara.bellagraceglobal.com, tamara.bellagraceglobal.com.
All right, and you can get your packets at tamara.bellagraceglobal.com, tamara.bellagraceglobal.com. All right, Bill Fetter is my guest today. Always a delight. And if you don't know, you should probably have a pencil and paper or a keyboard, however you take your notes, because he will give you great information that you'll want to quote later. You'll want to pull something out of the conversation. I wanted to remind our viewers, some of you are sending me emails and asking, so let me just remind you, the bill we talked about yesterday is HR 7148, Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2026. Dr. Heidi Klesick, who wrote the book on the brain death fallacy, and the many, many times that we've had people who were not dead or not on the way, that should not have had organs. The process started in procuring and harvesting organs. Some of them are walking today, able to tell their story. But this bill, appropriations bill, HR 7148, Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2026. In it, it has On page, let me tell you, on page 924 and 925, yeah, it's close to 1,000 pages, they said. It has the ability for them to see your medical records. And so they could be shopping for your body parts while you're still alive. So imagine if you've got some illness that may be terminal. How many people do you know who may have had a life-threatening situation? I had two in my family last year. One, they were saying they were putting on a ventilator and they were going to start dialysis. And I mean, it was not good. Imagine if these companies could be perusing your medical files and, oh, all of a sudden have interest in someone. It just is not, it's fraught with peril. It's not ethical. It's fraught with peril. And so we want to call your legislators, your senators at 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121. That will get you to anybody in DC. 202-224-3121. Any of your elected officials in the House or the Senate, I should say. Ask them in the Appropriations HR 7148, Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2026, to remove the language on 924 and 925 that remove the language about the organ donation. Just remove the language. They don't need to be looking at your private, personal, electronic records with or without your permission. You give them permission, that's one thing, your own risk, but the rest of us don't need it. So that's from Dr. Heidi Klesick and Twyla Braze. And so thank you so much. All right, Bill, do you want to talk about Islam? We can talk about, you mentioned fraud, and we all have talked about the fraud in Minnesota alone. We're now hearing California as well, and other states, Ohio, possibly having issues with this. We can talk about ICE and the situations that we've seen now when governors don't go along with the constitutional understanding of protecting our nation and having ICE agents upholding our constitutional protections as a society. We can go to the Sharia law ban that I mentioned earlier, whatever you would like.
Yeah, well, the Sharia law, I think if you stop and pick it apart, beating women, right? We should just say that we don't want something that allows the beating of women. And they'll say, well, we already have laws on the books that is like, no, put another one on the books. Because Sharia law says that if a wife disobeys the husband, he can discipline her. Imagine for a moment, if the Bloods, the Crips, the MS-13 gang, the Latin King gang, the Sonora cartel, a lot of news recently about the Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua. Imagine if they started calling themselves a religion. And then our government says, well, you're a religion? That changes everything. You have permission to operate in our neighborhoods. Matter of fact, we can teach you in our schools. And we and even now have Satanists begin saying that abortion is a religious right for them. And so a religion has a belief system. It has sets of practices. So in Sharia law, you're free to join, but it's the death penalty to leave the community. That's exactly the way that the Bloods and the Crips operate. You're free to join the gang, but if you leave the gang will gang up on you and kill you. So here we have the Sharia Islam that says it's called the apostasy laws or the Ridda laws, Riddah. Muhammad dies around 632 AD, and Caliph Abu Bakr is the father of the 6-year-old that he married. The hadith says that Muhammad had a dream 2 nights in a row of him marrying the 6-year-old daughter of his general Abu Bakr. And he said, well, you're the prophet. Here she is. And so when she's 9 years old, she, in the hadith, says that she was in the backyard playing, and the Muslim women got her and took a bowl of water and a rag and washed her face and said, Allah's blessings and good luck. And the prophet visited me that afternoon. I was 9 years old. And so Aisha was Muhammad's favorite wife, and so on and so forth. But that's Sharia. That's Muhammad. And the Sharia is trying to follow Muhammad's example. What Muhammad permitted is permitted. That's called halal. What Muhammad did not permit is not permitted. That is called haram. So Muhammad liked cats. Cats are halal. They are permitted. Muhammad did not like dogs. Dogs are haram. They are not permitted. And so Sharia is a long list of halals and harams, what's permitted, what's not, based on Muhammad's life. And so you can't even ask why. Why is this haram? I'm sorry, you can't ask that. Well, but I really want to know, why is this haram? If you ask again, we'll kill you. Because if you're asking too much, that means you're doubting. And if you're doubting, that means that the Ridda laws kick in and you kill somebody who leaves the community. And so anybody can enforce it. And so that's the danger. A family member can kill you. So we're talking gangs, and then the Sharia, in a sense, is simply has gang dynamics to it. There's vigilante justice within a gang. So it's justice outside of your normal law enforcement. Well, Sharia law is vigilante justice outside of normal law enforcement. And they have their own courts and so forth. And then stores in the jurisdictions where the Muslims take control have to pay protection money. It's called the dhimmi status, Dhimmi. And so infidels, non-Muslims, have to ransom their life once a year. This goes all the way back to when Caliph Umar conquered Jerusalem. And the archbishop there at Jerusalem struck this deal that the Muslims wouldn't kill them as long as they paid this huge annual tax called the dhimmi tax. It's very similar to the mafia, and right, the different gangs, Al Capone, and they would come into a store and say, oh, you have to pay protection money, and we'll protect your store. And if the store owner says, I don't need any protection, well, the next day the store windows are smashed and the store is trashed. And then the gang comes by and says, oh, darn, you should have paid us protection money. We would have protected you from this. Well, everybody knows it was that very gang that did the assault. And so here you have gangs demanding protection money, and you have Sharia demanding dhimmi money, very similar. Gangs will engage in child sex trafficking. Horrible, but it does take place. Well, Sharia has child sex trafficking for arranged marriages of little girls. It's sad. You read stories of Nigeria where the Muslims will come into a Christian school and take all the kids and kill the adults. And then, lo and behold, all the girls are then given away or sold as wives to these Muslim men. And so they're trafficking in children and dress codes. Gangs have dress codes: bandanas, baggy pants, streetwear, similar to Islam, male tunics, turbans, female veils and burqas. So why do Sharia following men wear long white tunics? Because that was the 7th century dress in Arabia where Muhammad lived. And since the goal is wanting to copy Muhammad in every aspect, whatever he wore, they want to wear. And so gangs have these different clothing features that identify the gang, and Islam has clothing features that identify a faithful Muslim. Distinct colors. The Bloods have their color is red. The Crips color is blue. The MS-13 colors are blue and white. The Latin Kings colors are black and gold. And Islam has colors green. That's the color. So you see lots of flags in America, like Minnesota, like Springfield, Missouri, where Muslim immigrants come in and say, hey, we want to update our city flag. We want to update our state flag and make it more reflective. And they'll put on an 8-pointed Muslim star and the green color. And they're doing this. You can Google it. All these different communities across America are now instituting Islamic colors and Islamic symbols. And so gangs have colors identified with them, and Islam has colors identified with it, very similar. And so they have signs. Um, in gangs, they have finger and hand gestures, special handshakes. And in Islam, they have finger and hand gestures. The wagging of the finger, the okay hand sign. You do not want to do that if you're in a Muslim country. It has a totally different meaning. The come over here finger gesture, you don't want to do that. Uh, Talking to the hand, bowing in prayer. And so we see that if the Bloods and the Crips and the different gangs, MS-13, simply started calling themselves a religion, and our government would say, oh, you're a religion, we're going to put you under a different category. And now you have free reign to take over neighborhoods and to put in place your vigilante justice system, right? With your colors and your dress, and you're treating women and the pimps and the prostitutes and the children, and you have your outside that called extrajudicial, outside of the country's laws. You're doing your own sub-law. And there's whole areas of Paris. I recently talked to somebody in Ireland and Scotland and in France, all around Paris, and they have no-go zones. And the police will tell you, if you go into that neighborhood, we will not come to your rescue. You are on your own. That neighborhood is under a gang has moved in and set up its own laws there. What's the difference between Sharia and these different other gangs that have the same dynamic? You're free to join. If you leave, we kill you. Now,
So we'll come back. We've got to go to our second break. We'll come right back to this because you're raising incredibly valid points, Bill Fetter. And we've talked about this. You know what? 2006, I know when I changed studios, I was talking about no-go zones with Kirby Anderson. Before 2006, we were discussing them in Europe. And now look, we have them here in America. When we come back, maybe we'll talk about the number of mosques, more in Texas than there are in Michigan. I think 350 in the Dallas area, Fort Worth area. And I can't remember the number that were either proposed or built just in the last year. Very frightening. And we hear 2 Sharia courts very close to the Dallas area. This is not something we're just proposing or suggesting or hypothetical. This is happening in our country right now. And if we're going to save it, we need to act on our Constitution, the law of the land that has been here since we were birthed. In 1770, what was it, 87, we had that convention. So there we go. And we had the Articles of Confederation before that, but you get the idea. We'll be right back. Bill Fetter, stay tuned.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work, try to see a doctor this week, or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Go to worldviewhealthcare.com. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. worldviewhealthcare.com. That's worldviewhealthcare.com.
The emergency kit available at worldviewhealthcare.com. Make sure you don't have to go to urgent care. I got pneumonia. I didn't have to go. I took this last year. Stayed at home, went to bed.
This is our new NutraSwish, Numi NutraSwish. You can find more information at neumi.com/TTSS. neumi.com/TTSS. One of the products we offer because you all have different preferences and respond differently to different items. So this is our lavender. It's for ladies anywhere along your journey. No hormones in it, but if you're taking a supplement, of hormonal supplement, you might want to check with your doctor. The blue is for anyone over the age of 18. It has glutathione, which is a antioxidant, helps with over 400 cellular functions, and it helps detox heavy metals, Forever Chemicals graphene oxide, one of those terms we learned after 2020, and it helps detox glyphosate. The good glutathione helps detox glyphosate. Glyphosate is found in ag chemicals or lawn chemicals, and some are very concerned about possible links to cancers, HPVs, and diabetes. But the blue bottle, the glutathione, helps detox heavy metals, forever chemicals, graphene oxide, and glyphosate. Then there's the mango colored bottle you see on your screen. Numi Neuro helps with your mind, your memory, and your focus. Now, again, after 2020, we heard something about brain fog, a term we'd not heard before. Whether it's from a virus or a vaccine, many have found relief, a little help with Numi Neuro, the mango colored bottle. When used with the blue bottle, it is so positive that the American Brain Council wrote about it and it looked like an endorsement. Though we're told they don't write endorsements, it was simply a positive review of what they saw. You can find more information at neumi.com/TTSS. neumi.com/TTSS for the Tamara Scott Show. Why? Because we want you feeling your best. And when you use that TTSS link, you help us be our best.
Backdoor the school into
All
Sharia
right,
compliance.
everybody. Here we come. Thank you so much for joining us, for staying with us. Bill and I are, as always, having an incredible conversation on the break. When we used to do Facebook Live, some of you got the best scoop in that 5-minute break, but I'm so thankful to have Bill Feder from American Minute joining us today. I was asking him some questions, and I'll ask some of them now for some of you. As you know, at the beginning of the show, and if you've listened to the show, I am working to get legislators in each state. I know we've got some folks at the federal level, Tommy Tuberville, Chip Roy, and some of these other folks who are, Randy Fine, who are now saying at the national level we need to do it. Absolutely we do, and I hope they are consistently working towards it. But you know, DC, you know, they often muck it up before they get it passed, just like the bill we just talked about. So I'm working with state legislators, and if you've got serious state legislators and you're serious about this, maybe we should talk. Let's talk some more about why. So I was just talking to Bill about this. When I say that you can have Sharia law, we're not telling you can't do your foot washing alone. You can't have the meals that are somewhat restricted by Sharia law or all the dietary issues. I'm not saying you can't do that. Although at the same time, some of those bills that they're talking about at the federal level say no immigrants that are Sharia law because that's incompatible. The very thing they ask is incompatible with the freedoms, as Bill was talking about, the rights for women, the freedom not to be harmed or hurt. That doesn't coincide with what is practiced in Sharia. So before someone comes into this country, I think that is a fair question. Bill, is it constitutional whether or not we ask that before they're a citizen? Are they going to uphold our Constitution? They all take an oath to it. But you and I both know you can use taqiyya, which is deceitful and a lie, because it will help you propagate the faith later. So is that fair for us to even ask that question? I think it is.
Yeah, well, you face the same with swearing into office with the hand upon a Quran. And the Quran, they claim, is directly from Allah, and it is superior to every man-made law. And they have a command to institute Sharia all around the world. And they think that there will be world peace when the whole world submits to the will of Allah. Some definitions.
Hold on. We put our hand on the Bible, and most always did. And we believe the Bible is the supreme law over our Constitution. We also believe that the Declaration of Independence, much of it came, our founding fathers, the writings, much of them came from their faith in the God mentioned in our Declaration of Independence. So how can people, when they're caught up with somebody at the water cooler, how can they defend the Bible? We believe it's the supreme law of the land, and hand on the Bible versus the Quran.
Yeah, top down versus bottom up. So in Europe, they believed in the Bible, but they believed in the divine right of kings. The creator gives all the power to the king, and he dispenses it to the lowly subjects. And they go back to the King Saul and on part of the Bible. The founders of America looked to the before King Saul part of the Bible. 400 years, millions of people, no king. And everyone is taught the law, and the law says that every person, male and female, is made in the image of the Creator, and he is not a respecter of persons in judgment. That's the beginning of equality on planet Earth. And so where you have a king, if you're friends with the king, you're more equal. If you're not friends with the king, you're less equal. If you're an enemy of the king, you're dead. It's called treason, or you're a slave. In the pre-King Saul, which is what the Pilgrims and Puritans looked to, there was no king. And the law said everybody's made in the image of God, and this God is not a respecter of persons. And so the founders of America looked to the before King Saul part of the Bible. And this idea that every town in ancient Israel had elders that they would elect who would meet together and make the decisions. And so they had one building in every town called a meeting house. The word synagogue means meeting house. That's where the rabbi would teach the law, and that's where all the elders would get together and do their city business, right? And so when America was founded, the Pilgrims and Puritans had one building in the middle of town called the meeting house. That's where they'd gather for the pastor to teach the Bible, and that's where they'd gather together and do the city business. And so the concept of top-down versus bottom-up, in Europe for millennia, you had the church was a top-down church. It was called the clergy laity. The clergy did the ministry, and the laity was lazy and watched, sort of a spectator religion. And when the Reformation happened and the printing press, everybody could have their own copy of the Bible, and the pastor would teach everybody to read the Bible yourself, and then have a direct relationship with God the Father through Jesus Christ that died on the cross to pay for your sins, and then plug in and get involved, and God will do his will through you. So Ephesians 4, the pastor trains the saints to do the work of the ministry. So instead of you watching the minister do the ministry trains you to do the work of the ministry. And so the Pilgrims and Puritans and Baptists and Dutch Reformed and the ones that had a congregational form of church government were the founders of America. They wanted a bottom-up participation versus Europe that wanted a top-down, you obey the king's mandates. So Romans 13, let everyone be subject to the governing authority. Romans 13 is understood differently in a monarchy versus a republic. In a monarchy, everyone submit to the governing authority. Well, who's the governing authority in a monarchy? The king. Who's the governing authority in a republic? The citizen. The word citizen means co-ruler, co-sovereign, co-king. We pledge allegiance to the flag and to the republic. We're pledging allegiance to us being in charge of ourselves. America is this experiment of self-government, as it says in the Declaration, government from the consent of the governed. The Constitution, we the people. And so, yes, you have top-down Christianity in Europe that goes back to the Bible with King Saul, and you have a bottom-up form of Christianity that was what America is based on that goes back to the pre-King Saul part of the Bible.
And out of our book, which we say is the supreme law of the land, out of our book comes our freedoms. 2 Corinthians 3:17, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. And Brigitte Gabrielle says it so well. When the more we read the Bible, the better Christian we become, better citizen we become, the better person we become. We love our neighbor. We know we can't hate. And if you can't hate your neighbor, you're likely not to harm your neighbor. And our founders, I think, said the better we became, the better Christians made the better citizens. But she says the more you read the Quran, the more harsh you become, the more hateful you become, the more violent you become. So there's the difference there as to why we promote one. And so,
so in Europe, it was very similar to Islam. It was top down. Now, the kings still had the Bible that still had the gospel in it, but it was top down, and you would have Spaniards coming to the New Worlds with their swords, and you would have, forced conversions and so forth. We look at that and are wishing that didn't happen that way. But in Islam, they believe it's top down, that Allah gives the Quran and that they can force it with the sword. And this contrasts with the founding of America. And it goes back to the founders' writings that God loves you and he wants you to love him back. But for love to be loved, it must be voluntary. And both James Madison in his Memorial and Remonstrance and Thomas Jefferson in his Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom said Almighty God created the mind free, and all attempts to influence it by molesting people are a departure from the plan of the holy author of religion, who chose not to propagate it through coercion, which was in his almighty power to do if he wanted to, but to propagate it through influence on reason alone. So here, our founder said, no, if God wanted to force people, he would have forced Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree. All of the creation follows rules. And it's almost like God has created everything. He's existed for eternity. And it's almost like at some time in eternity past, he said to himself, been there, done that. I can make everything. And it follows my rules. I would really like someone in my image that could love me. Now it gets interesting because love, by definition, must be voluntary. So in the context of everything God controls, time, matter, space, energy, he intentionally created one tiny thing he does not control, your will. Now, he could control it if he wanted to. He's that powerful, but that would defeat the very reason he made us different than everything else. And he doesn't need our love. He's not incomplete, and your love somehow completes him. He doesn't need our love, but he wants it. Parents don't need the love of their children, but they want it. And the more you love somebody, the more you want that somebody to love you back. God loves you infinitely. He has an infinite desire for you to love him back, but he'll never force you. Because the moment he would force you, he himself would know he's forcing you, and he would know your response is not a love response. And so it brings up other things, how God has to hide himself because he's so awesome. If he were to reveal himself in all of his universe-creating glory, your response would be involuntary. Like the Apostle John in the book of Revelation, I fell at his feet as dead, right? So he has to hide himself. But you look at in the Middle Ages in Europe and in Islam, it was a top-down thing.
Right.
And so in Islam, there's no concept of freedom of conscience. There's no concept that it's the love of God that brings men to. There's no love of Allah that brings you to want to submit to Allah. It's fear, right? And so there's no the one. A friend of mine has a ministry to Muslims, and he says that his most effective verse is Isaiah 61 that Jesus quoted. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because he sent me to free the captives and so forth, but to heal the brokenhearted. There's no concept in all of Islam that Allah wants to heal your broken heart. Allah could care less about your heart.
Well, and you took us years ago, the difference between Jesus and I think it was Muhammad. One healed, one killed, one restored the arm, one cut off the arm, one blinded, one gave sight. You gave us is that available in any of your books where people could find it?
Yeah. I have a book. It's called What Every American Needs to Know About the Quran, a history of Islam in the United States. Jesus never owned slaves. Muhammad owned slaves. Jesus never tortured anybody. When Muhammad conquered the city of Khaybar, the chief wouldn't tell where the treasure was hidden. Muhammad had the chief stretched out on the ground, and they kindled a fire on his chest. Jesus never owned slaves. Muhammad owned slaves. He was a white Arab that owned black slaves, like Bilal. And Jesus never led armies. Muhammad led armies. Jesus never killed anybody. Muhammad killed an estimated 3,000 people, fought in 66 battles and raids.
All right. We got to go to break. That's what I'm telling you, folks. I could ask him anything, and look at the wealth of information that he can bring to any conversation we're having. We've got to go to our third break. We'll be right back. And I didn't even get to ask you some of my questions on the institutions, the agencies that I want to protect and reasons why. We'll see if we can get to it or not. Stay tuned. Always good information. Bill Federer, American Minute, Tamara Scott Show. We'll be right back.
You're watching Worldview 2, built on the 35 years of Worldview books, documentaries, research, high-profile interviews, and the radio and television broadcasts of Brannon House.
DAWA is the cultural jihad.
All right, everybody, with Bill Federer. And again, we're having a great conversation during the break. Dawa. Bill just told me. Dawa is what, Bill?
It's cultural jihad. So there's a fast way and a slow way. The fast way to spread Islam was with the sword. The slow way is dawah, D-A-W-A. It's cultural jihad. It's where they come in as immigrants and have lots of kids and then take over the country from the inside.
And okay, spell that for us, because we should know how to spell it since we're living through it right now in America.
Yeah, D-A-W-A, dawah.
Dawa.
And so it's come in and you get involved in the institutions, you get involved in the banking, you get involved in everything. And they actually, it's the two-face where you're supposed to be super nice so that people say they're really nice, let more in. More come in, they form a community. The community gets larger and an imam shows up and says, okay, now that we're all here, we need to start following the Quran closer. And he gradually, step by step, like a shepherd, begins to tell them what's halal and what's haram. No, you've been dressing a certain way. That's haram. You can't dress that way anymore. And, oh, you were drinking alcohol. I'm sorry, that's haram. You can't do that anymore. And, oh, you were really good friends with an infidel. Sorry, And step by step, they would radicalize them. And the term radicalize just basically means you're following Muhammad's example closer and closer until you become religious, political, and military.
So this is why I want to see this law that would not in any way recognize Sharia law in government bodies, meaning whether it's city council, township, state legislator, or Congress. Not going to recognize it in our laws or in the bodies themselves. Not going to recognize it in our buildings, where it's a Capitol building, state building, a community center that's owned by the government, affiliated to the government, taking tax dollars from the government. Not going to allow it in our institutions like our schools. I want to ask you about our schools. If you can tell that story you told on break, that's one of the reasons why. And also the lunch programs, because we already hear about lunch programs where they're asking for halal meat. And once it's halal, Bill, correct me, but this is what I was just told this week. It's not just how they process it. It has to be butchered that way, processed that way, but only with Islamic people even cooking it and preparing it, meaning all of those employees, so those jobs as well, then go to Sharia in Islam as well, which is very discriminatory. We wouldn't allow that with anybody else. So there's that issue, why I say institutions, agencies. You've talked about harming young girls. You've talked about marrying 9-year-olds. If we don't, we cannot recognize Sharia in any way in our government agencies, welfare, healthcare, marriage, whatever it may be. We cannot recognize it. Our parks, our airports, buildings, institutions, schools. We don't need to put in foot washing stations. If someone wants to wash their feet, that's up to them. But we should not have to recognize it. Am I on the right track, Bill?
Yeah. Another important thing is offending. So when they say you have to be careful not to offend them, anything that's not Islam offends Islam.
I was saying.
They won't be unoffended until you convert.
Our existence is offensive to them.
Yeah, and the victimhood. So whenever they come in, they immediately accuse you of being the oppressor. So Muhammad, for those not familiar, Muhammad was born in 570 AD. His father dies before he's born. His mother dies when he's 6. His grandfather, guardian, dies when he's 8. He's orphaned, taken in by an uncle, Abu Talib, who's a merchant, takes him on camel rides, goes to different cities, goes to some Persian cities where he hears about the Zoroastrian religion that believed that paradise was filled full of virgins that would fulfill all the guy's desires. And then the Zoroastrians believed in jinns or genies. And lo and behold, these beliefs got reflected in his belief system. And then goes to Mecca. And there is a square building called the Kaaba with 360 different pagan gods. And the most popular was Hubal, the moon god. And their calendar began with the first sight of the crescent moon over the desert. And they had a rock they thought had fallen from the moon, a glass impact rock where a meteor hit the hot desert sands, melted it in this brown glass. And the pagans kissed this rock for centuries pre-Muhammad, walked around it, bowed to it. Muhammad kissed that rock, and it got incorporated into his belief system. There was a guy named Mani, a century or so before Muhammad, that combined different things from different religions. And it's called Manichaeism. And a follower of Manichaeism was St. Augustine, until he met the guy, realized he didn't know what he's talking about, and then spent the rest of his life debunking Manichaeism. But there was in that area this thought that, hey, maybe there's little bits of truth in every religion. And then there was the Sabaeans, and they're the ones that would, stone Satan and, cut off arms and legs, and those things got incorporated into Islam. And Jews, Muhammad originally had his followers bowing toward Jerusalem, and he incorporated that. One was a city, had three daughter gods associated with the constellations and the stars like Orion. And so Muhammad got verses from the three daughter gods. Well, when the city decided not to join Muhammad, he wiped out the city. And his followers said, well, what about those verses you got from the three daughter gods? He goes, oh, those are from Satan. So they're called satanic verses. But this idea that he would and try to incorporate some of the beliefs of the people he was wanting to join him. Now, when the Jews, so he's in Mecca in 610 AD. I'm leaving out some stuff, and he's sharing his faith, and few like it. And so he gets confrontational, and they chase him out of town. In 622 AD, he goes north. He's the first Muslim immigrant ever, goes north to the Jewish city called Medina. Three Jewish political clans control the city. They reject his faith, so he changes the direction of bowing from Jerusalem back to Mecca. And then he goes into the minority neighborhoods and he organizes a following. We're familiar with community organizers. And when his following gets big enough, he gets involved in politics and gets demanding and pressures the Jews to accommodate him and his new followers politically. Then his followers back in Mecca get confrontational. They get chased out of town for disturbing the peace. And they are lots of Muslim immigrants that come into Medina. And Muhammad says, well, you're the victim because they were intolerant of you. So you're justified in attacking the caravans headed back to Mecca. So where Jesus said, if they take your coat, give them your shirt, Muhammad's attitude was, if they take your house, you retaliate, take their caravan. So Muhammad got verses from his Allah. Like, Allah has given you the slave girls as your booty. And he gets a fifth of the booty. And there's hadiths where he'd send them out on their raids saying, do not steal from the booty. And so Muhammad fights in 66 battles and raids, killing an estimated 3,000 people, goes back into the Jewish city of Medina, gets offended at one of those Jewish clans, confiscates their property, chases them out. The other two keep their heads low. And now there's two Jewish clans, picks on the smaller of the two. The big one keeps its head low. Maybe you won't notice me. Now there's only one Jewish clan. Muhammad is taking a bath. According to the hadith, a spirit appears to him, says, how can you rest when Allah's enemies are in your midst? He goes, where? Points at that last Jewish neighborhood. He surrounds them for 28 days, brings them into the market, chops off their heads, 600 or 700 men, and then sells the women and children into slavery. So within 5 years of Muhammad coming as an immigrant into the Jewish city of Medina, there's not a Jew left in the city of Medina. So he came in as an immigrant, got involved in politics, and then got violent and chased out the previous inhabitants. So it's a 3-step process: immigrate, increase, eliminate. Immigrate into a host community as a religious refugee, get involved in politics and begin to get demanding. And then there's random outbreaks of violence that causes the previous inhabitants of the neighborhood to move out, and they take over the neighborhood.
Immigrate, increase,
eliminate.
All right, Bill, I'm glad I let you finish that. That's great, everybody, your 3 points. This is a show you need to go back and watch. This is a show you need to share with your friends. If you're not a member of worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, you need to subscribe now. So you have not just these great shows, our incredible guests, but all of Brandon's writings as well. Bill Fetter, thank you so much. AmericanMinute.com. So appreciate you. We just need to pray for you every day, folks. Pray for Bill, for God to expand his voice, to multiply his efforts, establish the work of his hands, and provide for his every need so this truth can continue to get out there. May God protect you and provide for you, Bill. Bless you. Thank you for blessing us with your knowledge. And to everybody out there, live boldly, love better, laugh bigger, stay warm, be encouraged, and never be complacent.